We
Next
also have
up.
in here the political impact of 2023 as it relates to dentistry.
Oh, this is a biggie.
I actually, well, okay, Dwight, I'll get out of the way then, because I actually wrote on my sheet, I don't see any political impact related to dentistry.
I'm with you.
So
I say
I'm
pretty,
tapping out on that one.
Yeah, pretty uneventful.
Okay. Dwight and
Craig?
Greg.
Okay, let me jump. So, I didn't really know at any given moment before COVID, like I never could really feel the difference about conducting business from state to state. So I'm not saying impacts to dentistry specifically, but to small business owners. Those who live in certain states had a very different COVID shutdown, lockdown recovery cycle than those of us who lived in other states. So, the red wave that was predicted to happen and the righting of the ship and a more centrist political view didn't really happen. So blue states got bluer, and I think when you look at politics, local, state politics, it really has an effect on your ability to conduct small business. If you are a practice owner in a storefront in downtown San Francisco and you cannot remove someone that's camped right in front of your dental office, that affects your ability to attract
Just
patients.
spray 'em with a hose, right?
Yeah. Well, the optics of that were terrible,
San Francisco.
but it's just, I'm just saying, like, the political implications of your state have a massive effect on how you conduct your business. Massive. We see it with our masterminders. When we hear what the people in certain states have to deal with, it's really quite scary. Like we are all practicing in states that were largely conservative run states, and we shut down for less time, recovered quicker. At the time we didn't know what they were, it was a gamble or an educated guess, but conducting business in certain states is very different. And I think that the political impacts on small business are massive. And for those that say there's no impact, it's just because I think we sit in states where there's less impact. But I think left-leaning policies are harsher towards small business owners.
That's fair. Dwight?
I think that nearly every one of our answers regarding the recession related to some type of government, official, or political impact affecting it. And I think we just kind of answered this question on its own. I believe that unfortunately our government likes to, as wonderful as our country is, likes to react and solve problems. And when they solve problems, they like to overreact. So I actually expect in an environment where they want to prep votes and prep a mindset for the next election, they're going to be prepping and making an impact. And whether that, like you said, Pete, maybe a stimulus, maybe I don't think there's going to be another stimulus at this point in time, but they're going to try and do something to rattle those cages. At the same time, I think we're going to start seeing significantly different renewals on our insurance plans for practices that take insurances, whether PPO, DMO, of all those other types, that are going to be pre-prepped to the Massachusetts laws that relate to MLR, like we talked about last time. I think they're going to be very proactive in making those changes. Even some of those concepts that are going to feel a lot more like health insurance concepts are going to start reeling their heads, because they're going to have to try and show profitability right away. I know that a massive portion of the ADA budget has now been reallocated now with their win in Massachusetts. And you've got for this year, there's already movement for new legislation in Connecticut, Nevada, Oklahoma, and 20 other states in the next legislative session with the ADA are continuing to support these efforts to implement these MLR expectations. I think that these insurance companies are massive, and they are much, much bigger business, and they've got much more strategy behind them, and they're not going to wait until they have to make things done. I think they're going to be impacting us now. And I think those of you who have insurance plans on you, don't be surprised when you start seeing the peeling back of certain components so that they can start to make them look a little bit more like health insurance plans. And I think that's going to be a lot of walls and barriers to seeing specialists versus GPs and all the kind of matriculation of that health insurance plan. So I see this as political because I think it could be, impacted across the board. But I still believe the combination of government likes to get involved and solve problems. It's half the reason why nothing is going on. When prosperity is happening, we tend to start a war and go pick a fight somewhere because the government likes to solve problems. If you look at that before every single war, it's the exact same story. It was just a time of prosperity and we go after it. I think they like to change and make impacts. Same thing with punching through MLR.
Dwight, let me ask you quickly, what is because that was a lot. I want to know, like, brass tacks, what happens to dental insurances with this new legislation? What's the trend going to be? What are we going to see?
He's saying keep it pithy, Dwight, is what he's saying.
Yeah, well, I just didn't understand what you said you're going to notice a lot of changes. So
I
think
within this 12-month window.
Yeah, right. I think within the next 12-month window, a lot of renewals for insurances locally will look very different than what you're used to. Whether
Understood.
it's
How so?
Adjustments to your reimbursement rates to kind of
up or down.
They're going to put in barriers for how you practice, I believe. So I think
specifically, give me an example.
Like what I said before, which was the fact that there may be a barrier between a GP and a specialist, a referral process, a non-direct. So they're trying to segregate all the portions of our industry, which is what happened with health insurance when it first got consolidated. The next thing is they're going to peel back to kind of hold back their money as much as possible before these get
less
implemented.
Reimbursement, more
less reimbursements for the states that are not implementing MLR as quickly as the other ones are in order to bolster their total national budget. It'll continue. So it gives them more time to strategize, more denials, and more criticism for those denials for how.
So just in summation, less payment for the dentist.
Yeah, I think initially that's going to be their reaction to try and bolster up those other states that are already doing
more pain.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I was trying to read through the word salad you just dumped.
Matriculation.
Yeah,
matriculation. Ray, were you okay?
I like how you use salad instead of diarrhea.
No, salad's more appetizing. I really didn't know, but that makes sense.
Okay,
that makes sense. What did you say the ADA about the ADA? You think that you said worthless?
They're bolstering a massive portion of their budget towards essentially doubling the amount that they were implementing into these lobbyists to pursue MLR throughout all these other states. So they're basically shutting down portions of their budget right now to focus on that. And I mean, they've got a perspective that they're pursuing against the Dental Plans Association, which at the end of the day, they've got some work ahead of them. And I'm sure they've marked it out for the next 3 to 5 years of absolute focus in that standpoint.
There is a relationship there is some financial exchange between the insurance industry and the ADA, which I think is a conflict of interest. But anyway, we'll put a pin in that. I think it serves both of them.
Dwight, I commend you on actually staying up with this because I would rather slam my pinky in a car door than keep up.
I'm with Pete.
Keep up with this shit.
Well, if the ADA is already spending $5 million in one
pinky.
state, you can imagine how much they're going to spend in others. And then there's going to be the rocket states, the southern states, the big ones, the Texas, the Floridas, honestly, Georgia, all the ones that we're in, that, once that jumps, it's an absolute, snowball effect. So there's going to be a large impact. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting on how that matriculates that and how we keep an eye on consolidation too.
3 matriculations. I haven't heard that since freshman year in college. I thought that was just relegated.
That got you all the way.
I'm glad that I'm here for a reason.
I should not have said anything. I was keeping count over here.
I did too.
Damn it! We should have had it. We should have had a shot.
Like you got
to edit that. Turn this into a shot with Trace Tequila. If Dwight says matriculation,
that's right.
We take a shot.
Yeah.
Obviously, your wife watches Bravo.
You're a mess. Well,
okay.
I wanted somebody to answer it, so
Dwight,
we're good. Yes.
Do you want to keep going?
Let's keep it going. So, new tech influence in dentistry. I think Pete knocked some of this out for everybody. Since being asked to talk less, I'll let somebody else start. Trey, let's go first. It's okay. It's okay. Y'all can talk about it on the next podcast.
New tech. Are we talking about new tech?
More.
Sensi pants.
Talk the same amount, but just say more.
We talking new tech?
Yeah, new tech. Go, Trey.
So the new tech, I think AI is the new tech. That's the only thing worth talking about. I think that is a useful tool that can be implemented across the board with a huge gain for everybody involved. Yep. And that is to say that those things happen very rarely in dentistry. So the consolidation of dashboards which I think, Pete, you alluded to this earlier. I was thinking a little bit about that, but it still hasn't happened. So there's benefit to that, but that's only benefit from the standpoint of us as operators, which I think would be a phenomenal addition to see, but no one's really done it yet. And I'd love to see that out there. But AI I think will dwarf everything in terms of tech's influence on this industry.
Yeah, I have an interesting statistic since we were all basically, I said chat GPT 300% as well. I have the thing, how many days it took to reach 1 million users. And of course, Netflix was 1,277 and Spotify 153, Instagram 75, iPhone 74. Now, how many days it took for chat GPT 3 to get 1 million users was five days.
Oh.
5 freaking days.
That's
So
amazing.
It is. And for those that haven't dabbled in it yet, this is.
I do remember 2 people that, let's see, when were we in Cabo? 2 people that couldn't be less interested in AI when Dwight and I were having this conversation.
I completely
think Craig
agree.
was actually sleeping.
Yeah.
But hey, the bandwagon
right.
came along, so jump on, guys. Here it comes.
Yeah.
Jump
No,
on the bandwagon.
That was it was so boring.
It was
2
not
weeks
actually,
ago.
Dwight. I think we should re-earth that podcast because
I think we should.
I think
I
it
think
was
edit out my
excellent.
snoring.
We should actually put it in place.
You got to
Actually,
dig it up.
Trey, I don't think you were less interested. I think Dwight and I were just matriculating all the way through.
Yeah, we're matriculation. Yeah,
Yeah.
matriculation geniuses. I was
Fascinating.
AI. I think the biggest thing I had in the AI, if I remember correctly, which is a far cry. I mean, this is a stretch to go back to that night, but I think I was having trouble seeing the implementation of it outside of the diagnostics. And when you look at a lot of the AI that
the
people talk about, there's
diagnostics,
really
right.
nothing. There's not a lot you can use it for. Chat GPT is awesome.
Well,
But-
okay. Maybe I should have disclosed that in that pod. Like that's what I was referring. Yeah, it's all good. I hear you on that context of that weekend. I'm not going to crush.
Well, also when
But
you
the diagnostics, I think that's the main part. I think the diagnostic is when I say AI taking over and influence this industry in that standpoint, I'm specifically talking about the diagnostic aspect.
Oh,
of
okay.
that.
I'm
Okay.
not even talking about that. I
See,
was
Craig
talking
and you
about
were talking about 2 different.
Yeah,
He's saying
so-
100% Chat GPT.
I love
You're saying-
Chat GPT, and I think it disrupts a lot of things. But the industry itself, diagnostics.
Interesting.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah,
Dwight.
I remember.
You wanna go?
Remember, you had the conversation, Pete, about like what makes a dentist. What is the dentist?
Yeah. We
thing
talked.
of the
We did post that, by the way. That
yeah,
was
it's
you and I
just
had
like
that
what
conversation.
percentage? Like, is it diagnosis? Is it your hands? Is it the comfort, human touch? What
Mhm.
Chat GPT 3 awakened for me was it actually was more human, empathetic than the average dentist. That's what like freaked me out. So I understand. Obviously, there'll be great diagnostic capabilities for AI, which are better than naked eye because we're just interpreting shades of gray or the grayscale for decay. And I think AI will be better at that.
Dwight, what
thought,
did you say the number of grayscale that can be interpreted versus human eye? What did you say the number was?
I just remember that it was about 40 times more accurate.
I
than
think the human eye can see like 5,000 shades of gray,
Yeah,
and there's
exactly.
yeah, okay.
But the point
So-
I was trying to make is that with the human aspect, once you dabble in GPT-3 and you see it, that's when it's like, oh shit, this is really good. It's more empathetic and more responsive than many practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's-
think as visionary of a talk as Chat GPT is, when you dive into it, I think for this year, if we're going to do 2023 predictions, I think that the expansion, I've been working with some of these AI diagnostics in my office over the last year, and they're getting better and better. We're implementing the endo side of it for endodontics next month. And just keep scaling the perio. The secondary perio is being told to you for all your patients coming in at morning huddle, things to that degree. That's a big influence. And I think that's going to happen. I think Chat GPT for 2 components. First of all, it's complex and it has to be broken down into individuals that can then use the technology properly to embed it in a easy to use format for dentists. I think that's going to take some time, only because I think it's going to be delayed a little bit, mostly because of remember, they were originally founded as a non-for-profit, and now they're
Yep.
transitioning
They
it to
still
a
are.
for-profit. And so it's a very complex dynamic that they're trying to figure out, followed by the fact that then they have to output that data and make it available for it to be used. And that, remember, it has to go to the most profitable markets as it matriculates its way down to different industries, including ours.
Take a shot.
So I don't think necessarily it's going to be down to us. I'm trying to help decipher that. But I've got one other winner, but you can go ahead and respond to that because that'll be a worthy conversation, I believe.
Okay, so I wrote down something that you guys have already talked about, right? Let me say something a little more bold.
Go for it.
I think 2023 is the start of the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah, I agree. Good.
The start, right? I remember being on stage at like a DEO or something, and I was sitting there saying how crypto, and we've already had blockchain and all this stuff, and this was the start. And that was probably 3 years ago. And like Craig says, I'm always way too early to the party, and no one's listening and saying stuff. But I think this is and I think AI gives rise to this because it brings everything up. And GPT-3, as good as it is, when GPT-4 launches in about a month, it's going to be 10 times better than what GPT-3 was. GPT-5 is going to be 10 times greater than what 4 is, which is 100 times faster and better than 3. Okay, so it doesn't go up just linearly. It goes up at scale. And I think both of those happen and are released in 2023, at which point, we start looking at what the Turing test is called. Remember, if you guys know, Alan Turing is the test that determines at what point a human and a AI are hard to distinguish which one is which. Exactly, the Turing test. And that is a massive inflection point, which then changes things. So if we look at the best new tech, the question was the best new tech to influence dentistry. That obviously it's going to impact diagnostics, but I think it impacts marketing. I think it impacts chatbotting and getting answers. I think we start looking at the integration. Remember we showed in the summit how Google was having the appointment
Assistant. Yeah, Google
so
Assistant.
I think our computers I think our Siri is going to start talking to our AI chats. And I think there's going to be a lot more efficiencies and automation in the way that has been highly disruptive and things we've grumbled about as dentists. I need to get this new phone. I don't have enough team members here, things like that. I think tech is going to solve some of that friction.
I agree.
Can you tell me what the fourth industrial revolution looks like though, Peter? What does that mean?
Yeah,
I'd love to know that.
I think it's just the renaissance of like things that have been baked but haven't been fully integrated together, meaning big computing. Now AI has kind of pulled that in, right? We have computers, we have synthetic biology, things that are going to be augmented by AI predictive things.
Right.
We have the NLP, which is the GPT-3, which is natural natural language programming.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is going to be augmented, Greg? All of the things. Everything will get a rise up, an augmentation, because AI touches so many things.
Well, all the things you just listed require less humans. So what happens to those humans? Where
It's
are
a $1 million
they?
question. It's what everyone has been panicking.
There's the panic.
It's the same thing computers did. Everybody says, "Oh, it's going to replace everybody." Well,
this will have a bigger impact.
I
So
agree
what
with
do
that.
what do
This
the
will have a
humans?
bigger
What do the
impact
humans
on,
do though?
on humanity than the internet did
What do
Pete,
they do?
what's your thought process on time frame of that?
think
this year.
This year?
I think this is the year 2000. The way that the internet
start.
came on is
start.
the analog to
Sure, okay.
2000. Yeah.
we'll give you the start. There, because I think for it to matriculate throughout, I agree that
Take a shot.
No. This is what's interesting. For every single industrial revolution, there was something that lit it, right? And I do believe that the level of tech that OpenAI and Chat GPT-3, whatever, all these things, as it grows and does what it needs to do, this is the fuel to that fire. And now it's going to kick off. And I agree that it's going to be this year. But if we're going to do a podcast about dental 2023 predictions,
Got it.
the impact on the customer service level, like the replacement of customer service people or the replacement of, all these other diagnostic considerations, all these other things, I think it's going to matriculate, but it's going to take a while because we're not the most profitable industry, right?
Okay, so you're saying I basically didn't answer the question. I answered it at scale, but not really as it relates to dentistry, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
you're
but
talking
we're all interested in that.
dentistry. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, okay, Dwight. So I'll go back to that. I think it influences. I think diagnostics get crazy. I think that becomes the standard of care. Maybe not this year, but I think it starts trending that way, that we become reliant on AI diagnostics versus our dental training.
I agree.
Okay.
And it standardizes our care across the board in a more consistent format to where people can't argue personal bias on these things. And I think that's
it's like what happened with medicine. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Like the pathway system for medicine.
well, it
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. It really made a massive change in my practice when I brought in these softwares that are AI driven for diagnostics. I mean, it's massive amounts of same day dentistry, massive amounts of diagnostics. Doctors that have been practicing 25 years and are like, I totally missed that. Just is what it is.
I think one thing to note, Craig, is that you can't compare medicine as a whole to dentistry as a whole, because dentistry is a technical skill.
Yep.
Everyone in dental school is sitting back saying, oh, we're not just tooth carpenters. That's bullshit. We're tooth carpenters. We do something. We provide
most
a
of
skill.
medicine is diagnostics, not so much surgery.
So
it's diagnostics and a prescriptive pathway. If this, then that,
which is
that's
a different program, because when you have a technical skill, consistency can be deemed quality. You can predict the outcome when you have a consistent outcome from a skill.
Makes sense. Good
That's
distinction.
a good differentiation, Trey. Good.
I'm
glad you brought that up. I'll tap out. I will let you guys know that like most things, I go down rabbit holes, and so I'm sorry.
No, I love it.
I'll probably.
I think we learned a lot.
Is great.
I've gone down the rabbit hole in this, just like I did crypto, probably 2016. So unfortunately, I'm gonna speak and be a little dangerous with my.
No, I love that. And I think honestly, it's one of the reasons why we love hanging out, because it gives us such a prop to sit on and say, hey, this is what's coming. This is where we're going. You've got to keep deep diving. We all will as well. One item that I want to add that I think for 2023 tech wise will be massive. I think it will start. I know of some other individuals that are trying to release this year, and I think it will be a giant push into web-based practice management softwares, not in the way that we've been dealing with them, which are, cloud-based or, local server-based. But I think there will be a massive jump in that category to get us out of this just continued failure rate of massive infrastructure and all these other things. So I'm going to make a giant push. There are some groups out there really small that are VC backed with massive amounts of money.
If you're doing this, can you reach out to us? Because that has been one of the biggest impediments of growing a practice, I think, is the software and the tech and the management of your servers, and someone saying this isn't possible and this doesn't talk to this.
Agreed.
So if you're working on that, my God, let us help you, because
work faster.
Yeah, well, shit, man.
I think it's going to be huge. And, to me, it's one of those things that I think could categorically change, but also facilitate a lot of our practices to being able to grow at scale and compete in a consolidating market, simply because we don't have such a barrier of infrastructure costs. And I think it's going to make a big, big difference. At the same time, I think it's going to require dentists, specific owners, to be more flexible about what they need for their software to do for them, right? And I think that's something that we lack the understanding of, right? But back in the day, Patterson and EagleSoft and all the ones that were built by our suppliers, they just built it to accommodate the doctors, because they initially gave you free software as long as you bought their supplies. And then that transition over time, they started saying, oh, well, now we can charge for it. But it was perfectly built for the dentist, but it wasn't built for scale. And so I think they're starting from scratch and ready to implement and open up, I think, mid-year in 2023.
And the cool thing is, not to pull this back to AI, but AI, the people who are most nervous about AI right now in GPT-3 are the coders, because you can actually get GPT to code for you.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you can open up and disrupt coding, now you can have millions of people coding and making product potentially, right? So it's a fascinating world. So hopefully this happens fast on your timeline, Dwight, because I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Do you want to keep going so we don't make this?
Yeah, let's keep going, guys.
All right. So we've got consolidation influence and what the future of DSOs. Do they change? How does the private small practice fare? And do DSOs go bankrupt?
You guys, there's two answers that are, I don't know who wrote them, but consolidation will slow and consolidation influences growthfully overrated. Who are those? Who are on the same page here?
I wrote consolidation. Your answer you're saying is, I think consolidation will slow. Want me to go?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
And then the person who agrees with you, I'd love to see that as well.
Yeah, I think consolidation is going to slow until interest rates come down, since most are backed by debt leverage. Okay. If look at all private equity is backed by leverage. The cost of capital has been increasingly more and more, right? And so for them to get capital, it's not the interest rate of what prime is. It's typically 8-10% of what they're getting these levered loans on. And if the economy potentially slows, then now you have to beat your cost of funds, and so they're not going to take these big risks and these big buyouts anymore. So I think consolidation. I think they're going to sit on the sidelines, wait for interest rates to come down, and then go back into the dental market. I think we will see several DSOs fold due to the intoxicating free money that we had and the expanding money supply that we had in 2021 and 2022.
Easier to do business.
Yeah, without
who also agrees with you? Who's the
hold
other?
on, I'm not done.
Oh, keep
I
going.
think also the dentists, the schools are rapidly expanding supply of dentists, and they're going to be entering the market. It's almost become a business because everyone has heard that you can make $300,000 a year, kind of training a dentist. So the expanding supply, there's going to be an expanding supply of dentists. I don't know if you guys have kind of recognized that. Which is not really related to the DSO influence, but I believe we're going to have a supply of dentists and not a demand.
Why is there a supply of dentists in your opinion? What's happening?
Because
just more
there
dental
has been-
schools, less
there's just
jobs.
Such a production.
They've been
Schools
opening up
make
more
money.
and more schools, Greg.
Okay, got it. So there's a net increase in the amount of dentists being produced per year.
But net decrease in the amount of demand based on going back to what I was saying about expansion of this intoxicating free money, blah 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 blah. Right?
Got it.
I believe that de novos are going to be super hard in 2023, and I believe that niche practices are going to thrive in this environment.
Interesting.
I'm the one that agrees.
Okay, go ahead if you don't mind.
I think consolidation's effect on things in terms of what people worry about, not all the little things that we've touched on here, but is grossly overrated.
Mm-hmm.
You're affecting an industry by certain things in terms of and a good example is web-based software or even cloud-based software. It never happens because there's no demand for it.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been demand until now because nobody has cared. So now you start seeing those types of things happen. So there is some effect in that regard, but in terms of the effect on the actual, and when I say this, not your average private practice, but a private practice that's a good private practice with a good operator that is doing well, he gets squeezed, but he's never pushed out. This is still a relationship business. It's not pharmacy. There are differences that we have in our favor. So I think the overall group slows, or the overall consolidation slows for all the reasons Pete said. I think they slow down as a way to then set themselves up to speed up later. I do think you're going to see people go bankrupt. I think those people get swallowed up or get absorbed by smaller groups that think they can fix it, or they disappear altogether. And I think the growth that does happen because of the slowdown ends up being mergers. I think you'll see some mergers happen that we typically haven't seen on a larger scale, as opposed to some of these mergers where they're absorbing smaller groups or even bigger groups. But in terms of some of the big players, you'll see the merger for that reason.
You and I have been oddly aligned in these.
Yeah, I disagree with you guys.
Disagreed,
Yeah, I disagree, but obviously, mad respect for both of you and what you think. But
now I will say this, Pete. Hold on, Craig. Let me jump in there. I will tell you, I disagree. I agree that from the money aspect, you're going to continue to push dentists out because there's a business behind it. However, the demand for dentists, I think, is skewed. I think the demand for dentists, there's still a huge demand for dentists. They're grossly underproduced, except for when you talk about access to care, whole nother topic there. But people need a lot of access to care that we don't have. The demand is only flooded in metropolitan urban areas.
Fair.
So I would agree that it's overproduced in that sense, or it will continue to overproduce. But I agree. I think that you need to see these people start to head towards some of the environments that truly need dentists, which there are a lot of.
That'd be great. Okay. Okay. Craig, go ahead. You said, consolidation speeds up is what you have.
Yeah. So I believe that consolidation speeds up. Whereas you guys both believe these mid-market DSOs and get their ass kicked, they don't go out of business. They just get acquired by more sophisticated DSOs. So the net effect is not that they're turned back to the free dentist enterprise. They still stay gobbled up. So when you have a crappy duct tape DSO or a mid-market DSO that was really highly debt funded, and it goes out, it gets gobbled up by somebody else. So it preserves the consolidation. That's going to be a high one. They're not going to give back territory. But I think that, in my limited experience talking to different dentists, they don't really run well-run businesses. I think the factors of the government are rewarding the bigger people, whether that be the larger companies getting more PPP or ERC and those types of things. I just think that consolidation accelerates. I see that a lot of dentists who maintain freestanding practices, although maybe they may not get the same multiple they would have last year, the pressure is going to be so great that they just want to tap the brakes and get out. So I see 2023 and 2024 continuing the pace of consolidation, if not speeding up. I think valuations may not be the same, but I think the consolidation rate stays or increases personally.
Okay. Good.
Dwight,
I like
curious about you.
Yeah, I think in big picture mode, just so I don't get a lot of lip about this, I think that consolidation will continue its stride forward. I don't think it's necessarily going to slow down. I think clearly there's two main components that make this complicated. If I were to ask you what the percentage of consolidation there is right now in the industry, most of us could come up with a different statistic that we read from somewhere else, and they're all over the place. They're somewhere between 20 and 38%. And I think that the rationale for that, the reason the percentage is so ambiguous, is because the definition of consolidation is ambiguous. It sounds like most of you are talking about the mergers and acquisitions and de novo development, but there's also affiliations and alliances and things of that nature that are now being clumped into those, right? A lot of us would be considered in those categories as far as what the ADA would consider a dental service organization, because we may have a management company that oversees the management of multiple locations, things of that nature. So I think that the definition is ambiguous, and therefore that creates some complexity.
For the sake of the podcast, can we just agree? I think we all would agree that your practice is consolidated when the management company that runs your practice or your DSO is not wholly owned by you. So I think what we understand to be consolidated is that we run independent practices, and your management company may be owned by you and others. But like, for the sake of the conversation, I think consolidated means by a larger, at least state or national DSO. Right? Is that what we all would agree upon, or just for the sake of this, or no?
That's not how they define it as far as consolidation, but I agree with you that that's how we're seeing it as far as whether you have control of your daily operations or not. If a dentist is in control or not, I understand that methodology. In that sense, as far as whether it's going to speed up or not, I think between the $1 million and $15 million acquisition number, I don't think that changes. I think they will continue to acquire these smaller groups. And the only things above that $15 million, I think most of that's going to be held until the market settles and there's less risk, and VC or private equity is not so scared about the rates and the impact of making that bet. So I think they're going to hold back a little bit on those. The only thing other is I agree with Trey in that there will be some mergers at the very top end when they can't sustain their variable debt interest rates or things to that degree, and they can't pivot back. They will do mergers. And so do I think all that turns into faster pace of consolidation? Yes, I actually do.
Okay, so we're 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
What do you, listen, guys, you're all talking about PE and interest rates and leveraging debt, but in all the different industries, if we do go through a recession or protracted, a longer term, like a longer recovery, don't you think PE is going to be more interested in less risky endeavors? They have to deploy money. That's just that the returns may not be as sexy, but don't you think more of the direction would go towards healthcare and dentistry than it is now, because you had all these other things, you had software and all these other things?
Yes, they want some healthcare in their portfolios because it is stable during pandemics and recessions and things of that nature, because people still need healthcare. So there's still a percentage of people's portfolios. They don't really care about dentistry and massive, levels of acquisition. They just need to know that their shareholders understand, or their money people are basically saying, hey, this percentage of our portfolio has to be in these stable industries. And that's what it is. And that's why they're getting involved. And honestly, that's really what it is. It's not a patient care model.
Okay. All right.
Dwight, one question. When you say the $1 to $15 million level, are you talking about revenue or enterprise value?
I'm talking about enterprise value.
Okay.
That's why I think that number is so low, because it's compared to, hey, enterprise value of a 20, 40, $60 million acquisition. I think those lower ranks are still going to be available because they're still going to be savory, and the interest rate is not going to be as much of a conflict to get over, right? We're talking about billions and billions of dollars, in these giant firms, and they're able to manage that, right?
Got it.
I think also there's a trend too, and not just to add one more thing. What I heard is there's a trend of more money going to PE, more money flowing into PE. So people are, looking for alternative investments, and there's more upside. And, it used to be that PE was the velvet rope of the high level classes. It's being more democratized. There's going to be more money flowing into PE, which will then translate all the way down to speeding up consolidation, and people maybe not getting, even though we're spoiled by higher returns, it won't slow. There's just more money coming into PE. Sorry.
The next big topic here relates to predict that hiring will become easier or harder. This is a big topic that I think a lot of people are interested in. So, will tech help? Well, everything, right? So predict whether hiring will be easier or harder. Let's start with that. Hiring will be easier. Unemployment will rise. Who wrote that?
Yay.
Okay. That easy. Next.
I agree. I think I predicted that hiring becomes easier due to lack of competition and fear of dentists. Usually dentists react when they hear, oh, we're going to have a recession. Everyone puts on the brakes. I'm going to stop marketing as much. I'm going to potentially not hire right now. I'm not going to expand. And I believe that people who migrated away from dentistry during COVID because there were banana offers and, hey, come work at my startup, or hey, come do this, are recognizing the value of most that had a great quality of life working in dentistry with a 4-day work week, and it was pretty good. So
well, look at all the people that were selling mortgages and real estate agents.
There's going to be a migration back to, and it's going to be easier to hire thoroughbreds, like I kind of said a while back.
I agree. A very common impact of recessionary environments is increased unemployment. But my question there that I think everybody else is wondering is what is your impact? Two of you who answered that. As far as wage inflation, do you think wage inflation comes down?
I believe it
in a more competitive market, as what you're claiming.
I believe it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the jar. I believe if you gave raises and you chased it all the way up, I believe you're kind of stuck now potentially
with your existing
team. Now you're saying for new hires, Dwight. I don't.
Correct. New hires.
I don't
Supply
know
and demand. I think
dictates
that.
Depends on where the new floor is, right, in your organization. I don't know.
How many of us do we feel we raise the floor of what we pay our people? Non-incentive. We're talking about base over the last 3 years.
I raised my floor.
Besides basic inflation increasing, I need to specify, like not crazy inflation, but what we would normally increase, right? Like a huge adjustment to accommodate, to hire and bring.
We did not.
I did not either
because it wasn't up to me. If it was up to me in my domain of control, I would have shafted that whole thing. I did not. I just think we're in an interesting time where the inputs are not hitting yet. So we still have people that are demanding, I'm a brand new assistant and I heard I can get $28 an hour, and they're still delusional in that, and they don't feel the pain of anything yet. So I just think that what feels to me is that things haven't fully, to use my friend Dwight, matriculated through the system yet. Like we don't have all of it hitting yet to drive the actual change that we're expecting, at least that I'm expecting.
Bottle's empty. I think it will be easier. And I think to touch on those things, because the unemployment goes up, now you get into a supply and demand. Granted, some of us raised our floor, but that's a choice of how you operate your model. And as the supply and demand, or because of the supply and demand, you have more supply. The demand goes down. The $28 an hour on the front end, they're not delusional now because they're going to get it somewhere.
They will still.
But that goes away because at some point, someone's coming in for less. And now, it's a pendulum. The pendulum's swinging. So
I think one of the micro effects, and I had this discussion just today in my leadership meeting, is that, when people kind of recognize that other people are going to be gunning for their jobs on your team, meaning people want to enter dentistry, people want these jobs. I think when you recognize that you have a great job and a great ecosystem with a great boss and a great team, and then you recognize that there's heat and there's a plethora of applicants. Like we have a ton of applicants right now. People trying
For
to
what
get in.
positions? For
For
everything?
all everything.
Interesting.
So I think
Are
it
you
makes
two seeing that as
hold
well?
on, let me finish my point. Is that I think that it makes people a little happier knowing eating their day to day. There's not this apathy or being a little disgruntled, being like, well, I could make more down the street. They know that they are they're in a blessed position, and like, oh, I really like my position now. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to do all things I can do to keep it because I know other people are gunning for it, which makes me happy that I'm the one who has it.
So funny.
What's funny?
It's just funny. It's true.
Oh.
It's when people want your job, people are happier. It's just interesting the way human psychology is.
Yeah.
Well, and even on top of that, what you're saying is people who work harder are at their job are more fulfilled.
It's so funny. Everybody
Isn't
wants
that
it the
amazing?
opposite way.
Isn't it hilarious? That is so funny. That's the truth. Like
So
this
true.
But are
weird
you
cycle.
guys, just to kind of finish that point, Dwight, Trey, are you feeling the same plethora of applicants at this moment?
Our applicants have increased. I would not call it a plethora.
Right. Well, it was going from like, desert to like what is an oasis? I mean, how it was so bad. Are you saying that it's better, or is it the best it's ever been? Or Peter, are you even saying that? Are you even
It's
saying
better. It's not the best it's ever been. It's not
is
even
this the
remotely
best
close.
it's ever been for you, Peter?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about the best. It's the most I've ever seen.
Okay, so hygienists, assistants, everything.
But look, I always said this too, is that like big cities react quicker to macro stuff than rural
Right.
things.
You do
So
always
like
say
Trey, it may not trickle to him yet. So for better or worse, I think I will see things before.
Right.
Even, well, Dwight and I probably very similarly.
Mhm.
Craig, you're kind of more in a secondary market, right? You're not in a giant city. You're in,
Right.
And so I think we will see things kind of as a canary in the coal mine a little bit before. And so who knows, maybe that is the indication of what's to come. And I think it trickles down from there. So.
Trey, you'll see it in your more Houston office, more direct, and then as it matriculates out, you'll see that differential. I
everyone
think
take a
it's really
shot.
good feedback in that sense
Yeah.
to give us as you go along. I would say that we're getting more applicants. I would say that the way I know is that there's more working interviews around, and that the existing team is more fulfilled because they're working a little harder because they see those working interviews. So I think that there's that side of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's healthy. They've also, our existing team, and I think Craig, you would agree with this, is they weren't willing to bring in random people who really didn't know what they were doing. They were willing to still up the work, and they're excited at the idea of having a little bit more of a stable, established team. And I think we're getting better quality applicants right now than what we were before.
You can just be pickier versus like, remember our masterminders even in the reception was like, I just need someone. I can't get anybody.
Absolutely.
And now you can be like, nope, maybe, yes, maybe, like you can be a little more picky, I think. And so look, the pendulum's swinging. I always talk about the pendulum. I think the pendulum's swinging back into the business owner's favor because for so many years, 3 years, let's call it 2 years, it was in the favor of not us.
I think the mastermind is a great way to see that, because usually I get 1 to 2 maybe per week that are calling me about all these applicants. They're trying to compare one to another. Last week, it was like 5 or 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're getting a whole lot more and they want to know which one to pick and things like that. So
now, are y'all seeing this is what we're seeing. So when you divide up the actual positions, I see a big difference. So dentists, hygienists, those are plentiful.
Yeah.
Assistants are very hard to find with good experience, and admin, you can pull admin from a lot of places, but it's still not as plentiful as dentists and hygienists, funny enough.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I see that too.
Well, look, this will be a fun thing to revisit and see like what happened.
sure.
I think, these predictions, I could be having to eat crow on this one, but
that's the fun part of it. Hey, we're all going to eat a little bit of it. We're all over on this one. All right, patient.
We're divided. Even better.
That's a good thing. Patient acceptance is next. Harder or easier in light of potential recession? Think tech would help. What would help?
This is hard. I think when you start making predictions and you start asking questions like this, like, I don't know if there's going to be lines in the sand of like, yep, I was right or I was wrong. So I will say that I think patients will demand high-tech dentistry. I think recession-resistant practices are typically the ones who are heavy insurance-based, right? So I think if you are a fee-for-service practice and you don't have your ground game suit ready to go, like you could be in a tight. And I would like to hear Trey's thoughts on that as soon as I finish. I anticipate patient acceptance being harder in the next year, but tech could potentially help with the wow factor over the competition. And I think in recessions, people defer their wants for their needs. And I think post-COVID, though, I think one thing we'll say is post-COVID, I think people are demanding environments, your dental office, to be very clean and modern looking and things like that. And unfortunately, I see some of these new DSOs, I know I'm going on a rant here, new DSOs who are kind of filling that desire bucket of people, right? So if you have a shag carpet and the old drills and the ripped chairs and shit like that, and then you have this fancy new dental chain like a Tend or something coming next to you, and it looks great and it feels good and it smells good and lighting's good, like, yeah, your dentistry might not be as good, but people don't know that, as we've always proclaimed. So, I don't know. I kind of went down the rabbit hole. I mean,
I agree.
I kind of went off on the tangent, but I think patient acceptance becomes harder in a recessionary time is where I'm going. That's all.
Yeah, it's elective spending.
Yeah.
You're competing for more discretionary dollars when you're talking about elective procedures.
Yeah. Which I'm stating the obvious. I know that.
Yeah, sure. But it's important to say, and it's a good lesson, because I think one of the things that's really interesting is that when you have, you use the word ground game, and ground game for me is insurance-based dentistry.
Right.
It's needs-based dentistry is really what it is. It's whether it is in a recessionary period or a period of growth, an abscess is an abscess. People need care, and you may not be doing full mouth rehabs and elective big cosmetic procedures, and they may delay an Invisalign or something along those lines, but they need to get a root canal and crown. They got to fix their broken tooth.
Yep.
They have to handle the things that are causing issues, namely pain, but also things that are affecting function and everything else. So having the large ground game or being able to have a solid foundation is the way I always refer to it in that regard is important, because it also lends itself to numbers. Patients that do that, or practices that do that well, have large numbers of patients. And when a large patient base is present, you can absorb a tremendous amount of fluctuation in the economy just on sheer numbers.
Pure numbers.
And on pure numbers too, what's funny is you still have more elective procedures to be done on pure numbers. So it provides a huge amount of insulation on a downturn in that regard. And frankly, it provides a huge amount of uptick on an upturn, or a positive type of economy on a growth phase, because that's a bigger base to pull from. So it's just a good way to operate a practice.
Numbers game, right? You're saying essentially.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. You're building a great foundation.
Craig, what do you think?
Yes, I mean, obviously, patient acceptance goes down in recession, and I think it's important to point out that I think a very large percentage, I know we cite the abscess, as a little cliche, like if you have an abscess, you still need to get your tooth pulled. I think that's a smaller percentage of the reality of our economics. And I think that dentistry by and large is mostly elective, cleanings and all the other stuff. I mean, the acute stuff that we talk about is obviously the abscess, but that's rare. And that's not going to support and prop up a lot of practices. So I think that DSOs, that especially ones that look good, have tech and have the economies of scale to leverage their costs and their reimbursements from insurance companies and stuff like that, they're gonna come out ahead in the recession. They'll be able to withstand it more.
I agree.
Dwight, what do you think?
I think just to add to it and not repeat, because I think the four of us are in a lot of compliance, I think this merges clearly into the next category, which is patient trends and desires.
Yep.
So technology in patient acceptance and those types of things, I think it comes down to three main categories. First of all, you have to have financing pay over time strategies for your patients. I think you need to have availability meaning flexibility, even if you're not offering extended hours, but that your patients know they can get a hold of you, that you'll see them after hours and emergencies. That's going to flex, even when before maybe we weren't as flexible to see those. I mean, for most of our practices, obviously we are.
So
That's our
access to
model.
pay, access to care.
Access to pay, access to care, and access to same-day dentistry as far as technology, meaning getting it
Access
all
to
done in one.
convenience. Okay.
Because once you get rid of their pain, they may not come back for that buildup in crown. Meaning, if you
Yep.
take them out of pain on the root canal, are they coming back for the follow-through? Those are the parts and pieces that I think that same-day availability to go from specialist to practitioner, or that same flow, is really where we need to be more flexible. So again, it comes down to an extensive category of customer service, which usually keeps us surviving in the prosperous times too.
Very good, Dwight. Very good.
So anything else we want to add on that patient trends or desires section?
No, I think that wraps it. I mean, I think we stay in our lane from a I think we got outside and we're in the macro talks and the AI talk, which is fun because like how many predictions can you make in a legacy business like dentistry, right? I mean, it's not that fast moving. Luckily, it's not that fast moving. We're not in this massively volatile industry.
Right.
So that is a blessing. So, our predictions are not going to be that bombastic.
No.
But I think we've had fun with this today. I sure have. I actually I think it was daunting. I think all of us were kind of looked at this and like, damn, we got to fill out this form. But
It's
it
a lot of
actually
work,
forced me to like really think like, what do I really think is going to happen? And I think that helps us as operators, just like it could potentially help the people listening and their opinion. It helps you form your strategy, your reactionary strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, then like you're just going to fall victim to anything that comes along. You're going to be the victim. So I think this is a good exercise to do so that you can form, be proactive and potentially contingency plans what could happen one way or the other.
I agree.
So
Great thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dwight, what are we going to talk about next time so we can keep all the BP listeners enthralled on the edge of their seat?
We are talking about hiring strategies next time.
Cool.
And going down the road of strategic thought, different ways to do it. I think it's going to be interesting because a lot of us are going to have a lot of availability in front of us on how we want to strategically hire the right people. But more importantly, you're going to have a flood of applicants. You want to be able to understand how to do that and do that properly, how to empower your team to hire the right people under them as opposed to us get involved. All the types of things like that, and having some fun ideas like Trey has on how he recruits certain people, which I think the mastermind loves to hear some of that. I'm sure everybody else will too. So.
I got to say the impact you've had on this and the mastermind, just like even opening our eyes to, the culture index and hiring was so daunting. Even the concept of posting a job is so daunting. And by you kind of putting in that filtering mechanism, right? And saying like, you don't have to basically kick all the tires of all the applicants. You kind of know like this person's kind of suited for the job. And I'll only need to talk to these 3 out of the 100 that have applied or 5.
Yeah.
Right? So it's made it almost gamified it.
Totally. Dwight, can you give the listener a link just for you to have that for that profile that we were talking about? How do you want people to get in touch for Culture Index? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and put it in the show notes.
Talk
No
about it next
problem.
time too.
That way we've got it all in there, and it'll definitely be part of that podcast where we'll discuss kind of the rationale and the strategy and really how to kind of speed up the process to make sure you're getting the right fit for your team. I think that's great. Yeah, let's do it. Great pod, everybody. Good to see everybody.
Guys.
Thanks, guys.
Beautiful.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks
Let's see how our predictions go.
Bye, besties.
Bye. See you guys.